Hi, I'm Kate and welcome to my channel. Let's talk spring. As a teacher, spring is one of my favorite seasons. It means we're getting closer and closer to summer. As I'm filming this, I'm currently on spring break. However, being in Minnesota, outside is still covered in snow. We've had snow a lot this week, so it's not feeling the springiest. So what a great time to talk about my favorite spring eyeshadow palettes. So I have quite a big eyeshadow palette collection. Palettes are probably my favorite makeup item to talk about. Seasonally, I definitely switch out what I'm using. Winter, I use a lot more grungy tones, deeper tones, a lot of navies and dark greens, deeper tones. So I'm really excited to get into some lighter colors for spring. I love pastels, pinks and yellows and lavenders. As you can see, I have pink and yellow going on today. So I'm going to share some of my favorite pastel palettes, some of my favorite spring color stories, and even some more like neutral but good for spring palettes. First up, an oldie but a goodie. This is from Anastasia Beverly Hills from the Norvina collection. This is volume 4. This is a big palette, but this is beautiful for spring. You have the pinks, you have the soft purples, you have some neutral tones in there, some yellow. I actually wore this shimmer up here for my wedding a couple years ago. This is a beautiful spring palette. One more from ABH, a little more on the neutral spring side. I have the Carly Bible palette. I still love this one. Just some of these really pretty coral tones. The shimmers are really beautiful. I typically go pretty neutral with this palette, but it's great springy, soft neutral tones. Let's dive into what I'm wearing on my eyes today. So again, my look is kind of pink and yellow. This is one of my favorite Nomad palettes from last year. This is the Provence palette. This is beautiful. I like this palette way more than I thought I would. It actually ended up being my top ranked Nomad palette of 2022, and there were a lot of beautiful Nomad palettes from last year, but this just screams spring to me. You have the soft pinks, the yellows, the purples, some coral tones, the really soft shimmers. I don't know if you can see, but these shimmers have a lot of really cool shifts to them. You do have some deeper shades to add a little depth to the outer corner, which I really love. This is fantastic for spring. All right, I'll keep going with Nomad. I have a couple more Nomad palettes that are very springy. Next up is the Paradise Islands palette. This one I did not initially pick up. I ended up getting it for my birthday last year, so this is also from 2022. I love it. I did so many looks with this palette. I'll see if I can find some pictures of looks that I've done with these palettes. This one I dipped into way more than I thought I would, but beautiful, bright and springy. Verging on summer because of the richness of some of these shades, but this is another beautiful, colorful spring palette. And of course, if we're talking Nomad and spring, the Tokyo palette. This is one of my favorite pastel palettes. The mattes are really nice, but these shimmers are all like topper shimmer shades, so they can just layer on other things beautifully. I keep this one on my desk in the springtime, and I will layer these shimmers on looks with other palettes as well, but beautiful pastels. All right, let's dive into some ColourPop. ColourPop has a lot of really springy palettes. I think this is one of the first ColourPop palettes I ever got. This is the Sweet Talk palette. It's really shiny, the background, so it might be kind of hard to see, but a lot of really pretty corally pink shades. Beautiful for spring. I haven't used this one in a long time, but when I first got it, I was using this every day. You have a Super Shock. You do have some glitters in there, which I don't love, but you can get really good depth with this. You can keep it really light. Just a great spring palette. My newest from ColourPop is the Pretty Please palette. Now this is more of that like mauvey spring, so you have some really pretty kind of purpley neutral tones, really soft shimmers, nothing like super impactful, but if you're looking more for springy neutrals, this is definitely a good option. One of my favorites from ColourPop, now this one has some great neutral options and some great springy colorful. This is the Garden Variety palette, one of their 15 pans. So you have some really pretty corals and berries, but you also have a lot of great neutrals. You have a pop of green in there. Now this is one that I take traveling a lot because you can go really neutral, but there are some pops of color, so another great spring option. And of course, I have the Sailor Moon palette. This just screams spring, all these beautiful pastels. They're also really rich shades. So this bottom row, I don't love that there's glitter in the mattes, but it does kind of just dust away, so it's not a big problem. The shimmers are really pretty. I love this one in the spring. And last from ColourPop, I have the Mint to Be. I love minty greens in the spring, and this is just a great option. I do have some other palettes that have mint shades, but I like the variety of the mint shades in here. You can go really deep, you can go really light. The shimmers are soft and pretty. There's probably a couple other of these little ColourPop palettes that would work for spring as well, but this is definitely my favorite. Next up is one of the newer palettes to me. It's not that new of a palette, but I've recently picked it up from Glaminatrix. This is the You Beauty palette. And I love the variety in this palette. I don't know how it'll show on camera, but you have some really pretty softer mattes, and then the shimmers, you have this purple, this blue that are kind of that brighter spring feel. I love this. I've already done a couple looks with it since getting it, and this one's gonna be staying on my desk for a while. One of my top palettes from 2022, I will link my video ranking all of my 2022 palettes, is from Cosmic Brushes. This is the Serenity palette. This is a fantastic palette. I tried to get the Muse palette, but there was a fiasco with checking out. I'm okay with that because it looks very similar with a lot of tones, but this one is just beautiful. You have some really bright, kind of yellowy, orangey coral, purples, really fun shimmers, but you can take it a little deeper if you want to. And these are really affordable. I think these are like $25 US for a lot of shades and really good quality. This is perfect for spring. I love it. Another oldie but a goodie, this is from Huda Beauty. This is the Mercury Retrograde palette. Still one of my favorite palettes. And this is another one that has a lot of really good springy neutral options. The only really deep shade does lean more purple, so if you are going to take it deeper, it's kind of always gonna have that same feel. But the shimmers in here are fantastic too. They're just super, super impactful. Mattes blend beautifully. Still one of my top 10 palettes in my whole collection. I have a couple springy palettes from Juvia's Place. So first up is the Deuce palette. I still love this one. I should probably pull it out more. Some great neutrals, some great soft pink shades, especially this pretty pink shimmer up here. Just beautiful, simple, and pretty. And also from Juvia's Place, I have the Garden of Juvia's. Now this is like a perfect pastel palette. I love this so much. The mattes are beautiful, the shimmers are beautiful. I've done quite a few looks with this as well. This one will probably sit on my desk for spring also. I've used the shimmers in here to layer on other looks as well, but the quality is great, and these are perfect spring colors. From Glamlight, I have the original Michaela palette. Now, I have both of the Michaela palettes, but this one is definitely top for me. There's such great variety. Again, you have a lot of neutral options, but this just screams spring. You have the minty greens, the soft purples, the pinks, the corals, the yellows, the greens, and it blends out beautifully. The shimmers are really pretty. I love this palette. A color that I don't use often is purple, but in the spring I really do a lot more. So I have the Kaleidos Lunar Lavender palette, and I love this, especially for the spring. The mattes are beautiful. Shimmers are great. I love these compact little palettes. These are great for traveling. I will often take this one. I mean, look at it, it's just small and it's really sturdy, so you know it's not gonna like fall apart in your bag, but this is beautiful for spring. A brand that I don't really hear much about anymore is BH, and this is the Lost in Los Angeles palette. I don't know if they were sold or they closed or something. I have no idea, but this is still a great palette. I think I've used this to do some of my butterfly looks as well, which are really fun. I'll see if I can post a picture. Great quality, great color options. I love this like watermelon-y shade shimmer, probably my favorite shade in the palette, but this is beautiful. From Shroud Cosmetics, of course I have the Creepy Cute. This is just perfect pastels. Plus you have a black and a gray in there to kind of balance things out, but the quality of these shadows is fantastic. I have, I think, all of Shroud's palettes in my collection, and they're fantastic. You can't beat the quality. I also picked up the Creepy Cute too, so put them together and I think they really complement each other well. Original Creepy Cute, I feel like it was missing a yellow, but now you have a yellow and just a little more variety, but I really like both of these for spring. Last but certainly not least, probably my favorite spring palette in my collection is from Black Moxy Cosmetics. I do have a code with them, I'll put it below. This is the Pastel Obsessions palette. This is the first thing I ever tried from Black Moxy, and it drew me in right away. It is a mostly matte palette. You do have a soft white shimmer, kind of a pinky shimmer, but this shimmer right here is such a special shade that can layer on anything. I've used it in looks with other palettes plenty. It has quite the dip in it. I'm obsessed with this palette. I've loved every look that I've made with it. I don't even think it's still available, which makes me really sad for people that don't have it, but this is a fantastic palette. Well, thank you so much for watching and listening to me talk about my favorite spring palettes. I'm very excited for spring to get here. By the time I post this, it's probably technically spring, but here in Minnesota, all I see is snow. So hopefully it melts fast and starts to feel like spring. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.